My talk today includes some really serious themes of child abuse, rape, oppression, enslavement, and other traumatic topics. So before we begin, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge and hold compassion for every single person who has suffered such violence. The patriarchs may take center stage in our discussion today, and I may deliver the opening in a dystopian way. But my goal is to recenter those whose lives have been broken by these and other sins. And so, with the same shifting energy we have become accustomed to dealing with in the flashbang change of headlines, good morning and welcome to Pick Your Patriarch. I'm Angela Nevitt Meyer, and I'll be your host today as we explore what it means to take sides when two global leaders face off with very real consequences for all of humanity. Are you ready to choose? Let's consider our patriarchs, men who have been elected by very different processes to positions of extraordinary power and influence. First up, Donald J. Trump, elected President of the United States by less than 1/3 of eligible voters, accused rapist, sexual assaulter, and convicted fraudster. President Trump works overtime to obscure his cozy connection with child trafficker and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. He has captured the hearts of white Christian nationalists with attacks on immigrants and women's rights, all while enriching billionaires at the cost of poor and middle-income voters. Behind the spectacle, Trump's love of show and himself help obscure the systematic rollout of Project 2025, a governing blueprint written by the architects of the Heritage Foundation, wealthy Roman Catholics among them, dismantling every protection that stands between the vulnerable and the powerful. His administration's success likely depends on the Supreme Court, with 6 of 9 justices also being Roman Catholic. Next, Pope Leo XIV, elected by the College of Cardinals, was born Robert Francis Prevost in Chicago. He spent years in ministry among the poor in Peru before being called to Rome. And on May 8th, 2025, he became the first American pope. He spent his young papacy speaking out against war, the dehumanization of immigrants in the United States, the weaponization of AI, and the enslavement of the vulnerable by the powerful. In a surprising move, he formally acknowledged the Roman Catholic Church's role in commissioning and blessing the institution of slavery in his first encyclical on human dignity. And he asked for pardon on behalf of the whole church. This, while the Trump administration has been rushing to eliminate evidence of the ills of U.S. slavery from public parks and institutions. Unsurprisingly, the Trump administration has not liked Leo's angle one bit. Trump called him weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. When Leo spoke of a world ravaged by a handful of tyrants spending billions on war, Trump accused him of supporting Iran's nuclear program. The Pope responded directly, "I have no fear of the Trump administration or speaking out loudly of the message of the gospel. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to guess that based on UU values of justice, transformation, generosity, and equity, a lot of us might be intrigued and enjoying the energy of Pope Leo in this arena. Yes? I am too, but it's not uncomplicated. My first instinct when I'm asked how I feel about Pope Leo as a champion opposed to President Trump is to find myself in the internet craze of a question, man or bear? Over the past year, women across the internet have responded to the ridiculous question of whether we would feel safer encountering a man or a bear in the wild. Unsurprisingly, women have replied resoundingly with, bear. The violence that men have caused women since the dawn of humanity is traumatic and deep. To cope, women around the world coach one another on how to avoid the male gaze and physical attacks. We could probably have a whole talk on the ways women in this room alone have adapted our lives to keep ourselves and our daughters safe from men. Men are so unsafe that we tell our girls they can't wear spaghetti straps to school on hot summer days. Men are so unsafe that every minute in the United States, someone is sexually assaulted, and every 9 minutes, that is a child. Men are so unsafe, the U.S. voted a philanderer and a convicted rapist to the U.S. presidency. When a rapist. Men are so unsafe that priests, who the Roman Catholic Church deigns the most worthy to image God because they are men, have perpetrated a scandal of sex crimes that will never fully see the light of day. In the United States alone, thousands of Roman Catholic clergy members have been credibly accused of sexual abuse, a reality that patriarchal protected procedures and sacraments of penance would never have owned up to had the Boston Globe not blown the story. Men are so unsafe that the canon law of the Roman Catholic Church dictates that a priest who attempts to ordain a woman is automatically excommunicated, removed from the church immediately. According to the same canon law, a priest who rapes a child faces a process that might result in defrocking. The church considers the ordination of women a graver sin and a graver threat to the institution than the rape of a child. So when I'm asked, President or Pope, what do you think about this, Leo? I hear man or bear. Who is least likely to hurt me, my children, and the women and children who make up more than half the planet? I don't like the options. The Holy See has never acknowledged how its teachings and structural power directly reinforce the sexual, spiritual, physical, and economic violence against women and girls globally. So forced to choose, because we really don't have options here. We're looking at a world, and this is what we have to work with. I pick the Pope. Now, that doesn't mean that the office he holds is not still burdened by centuries of sins against humanity. Even a very good man in that seat will continue to cause harm by upholding the patriarchy that built it. That goes for the White House and the legacy of white supremacy, too. And so my position today is complicated. And my hope for us is that we can learn to avoid aggrandizing any figure as a hero to humanity, but instead see, acknowledge, and support their good works. have compassion for their humanity, and continue to call them to conversion toward a world thriving with human dignity and planetary health for all. So the Pope grabbed the attention of Catholics and non-Catholics alike when he recently acknowledged the Church's role in advancing slavery, and he asked for forgiveness on behalf of the Church. But I want to point out it has taken centuries for the Roman Catholic Church to produce a pope with the willingness and strength to honestly assess its structural violence. It is an important step. But when it comes to his face-off with the US president, the situation is more complicated than most people realize. It really isn't a heroic confrontation of hero versus anti-hero, as in Pope versus president, but a public challenge on who will dominate the future of humanity, including how we understand ourselves and the paradigms in which we will operate. The battle is happening within the Catholic Church as well. We have Catholics who are liberationists, nuns, clergy, and lay people whose theology is rooted in gospel love. Since the dawn of Christianity, these disciples have taken seriously Jesus' commandment to love our neighbor, clothe the naked, feed the hungry, heal the sick, examine our consciences, practice reconciliation in the context of community, and pray that through us, God's kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. They include people you might know like Dorothy Day, Oscar Romero, and most likely any Catholic you know volunteering at a food pantry, running mutual aid programs, or holding vigil outside a detention center. We also have Catholics who are power preservationists. Since the fusing of the early Christian movement into a politically armed Roman Catholic institution, these Catholics have advanced dominion over the world, not solidarity with it. They are the popes and politicians who have weaponized other people's faith, securing relationships of convenience with monarchies, building kingdoms in the name of Christ through forced conversion, inquisition, colonization, and enslavement. And this includes numerous posts across the centuries, and more recent figures you might recognize like Leonard Leo, Steve Bannon, and J.D. Vance. It's a movement that has weaponized anti-abortion and more recently anti-trans rhetoric as its primary organizing tool, not to protect life, but to consolidate power. You can decide where you'd classify the Catholic Supreme Court justices, but aside from Sonia Sotomayor, I'm side-eyeing a lot of power preservationists. They had help getting in that room. That is to say, the Roman Catholic institution may be a tale of two churches, but without the language or the practice to contend with our own complexity. Yet contend with it, Pope Leo must, as did Francis, his predecessor. Now, to be honest, I think the president and his pack are scared of him. Good. Peter Thiel of Trump's Silicon Valley cronies, he sure is. He said the thing he fears most is a woke American president. Yeah. Pope. Oh, sorry. He said the thing he fears most is a woke American pope. Thank you, Jarrett. That makes more sense. It helps to have your husband in the room. But we have to be careful that we don't celebrate a patriarch into another stage of humanity where we've just shifted male dominance. Pope Leo may be a good man. I think he is. But he's holding a seat of great power. He needs our prayer, our encouragement, and our support. He also needs our thoughtful participation and call to consciousnesses when he misses the mark. No human gets it all right, and he has inherited an unenviable position in world history. I'd honestly love to imagine Pope Leo leading the Roman Catholic Church through a paradigm shift to a future where millions of people don't have to constantly protect themselves from man-made threats perpetuated by the church. He has an important purpose. Men of the church must be the ones to end the original sin of sexism that produces its patriarchy. Just like the white people in the United States are the only ones who can work to end U.S. racism. It is inner work that calls us to reshape how we show up, examine the impact of our power, and live into new patterns of being, letting those who have been historically marginalized take up their rightful place with rightful resources and equitable influence on the world. So let's do the work of imagining a world where women and marginalized people are not forced into choices like man or bear, president or pope, knowing that either way, we're choosing the least of threats against us. We need to imagine other options. Lucky me, I've seen this fresh imagination creating new possibilities in my own home. And I'm going to share a story about my own kiddo when he was 13 years old. But I believe that every person in this room has a story like this that you have participated in, where you can point to ways that you have sought out third ways, seeing it happening. So here's my story. Our house was Grand Central Station for my son's friends in the neighborhood, and it was never gender divided. Friends were friends. But one day, the summer before 8th grade, something happened. One of his lifelong besties told him that another friend put his arms around her in a way that made her very uncomfortable. And he wouldn't let go no matter how many times she said, "Stop." Jackson, who's sitting right here. He didn't waste a single minute. And I watched a world-changing moment unfold as he very determinedly set up a card table and 2 chairs by the stop sign in our corner lot. And then he picked up the phone and he called his friend and said, "I need you to come over here." From inside, I watched through the window as his buddy walked down the street. I had an observation, but I had no idea what was really happening until he came in and told me. He said to his friend, "Listen, you're my friend, and I want you to be my friend, but you did something today that is not okay. You took your arms and you forced them around our friend, and no matter how much she told you she didn't want to be held or touched, you made her fight to get out of her grasp. You can't do that. Today, you need to apologize and never act like that again. When someone says stop, you stop. And if you can't do this, we won't be able to stay friends." The buddy apologized. He thought he was playing. And at 13, that's probably true. On all accounts, I've always thought he was a really sweet kid. But seeds of future terrifying behaviors can start with what we think of as innocent play. Jackson's other friend accepted the apology, but she said, "I still don't trust you." And what an important moment of truth. Because an apology is not proof that someone won't keep hurting you. So Jackson told her that's fair. It was the harm-doing friend's job to earn trust again. And if she wasn't interested in spending time with him, he was fully in support. Today, in their 20s, they're still best friends. That's the kind of radical world revisioning I'd like to see the Pope learn to practice. Not apologizing centuries later for things people did before he was alive, but owning the decisions the Catholic Church is making today that are still causing harm. That means more than calling out the harms of people on the outside, like the president. It means calling in the entire College of Cardinals and Global Conference of Bishops and calling them to consciousness together to reflect and develop the understanding they need to issue a sincere apology and then do the work of change so that to repair when it comes to the harms they have caused and structurally sustained through patriarchy. It means inviting in the voices of those who have been harmed to start naming the terms for our healing. So long as women and oppressed peoples do not have a fully equal seat at the table, it's just lip service. Kicking a can for another pope a few hundred years from now to have a, hey, look at me, I'm a good guy moment. Like, I'm really sorry that I let that happen to you decades or centuries ago. It's just not the same as flexing a muscle that says, I see and will not tolerate this injustice today. So my trust is thin, but I do feel optimism. Pope Leo can't show his full hand, but I do think he's showing his heart. His solidarity with the marginalized and the poor is very real, and he may be more capable of collective examination of conscience and transformation than any of his forebears. We can hope. That's tremendously exciting and would be good for everyone in the world. If he is successful, he could build a coalition that places us all on a healing path for a brighter future. And as long as he chooses to uphold a church that treats LGBTQ plus people and women priests like me as if we are among the greatest threats to humanity, we won't have justice or unity. In his same encyclical on human dignity that he used to apologize for the role of the church's role in slavery, he did hint that he understands the grave injury the church has wielded against women in our inequality. And he indicated that things do need to change. So the question we can watch unfolding is, will they? Or are people like me destined to have a greater respect for him than he ever would for me? Alas, when we're working to create the world we deserve, we do need to learn the value of coalition and moving where we can in the same direction. As Catholics, we might trust that God and the Holy Spirit are at work. That's the language of our tradition, right? And that could help us shift the entire landscape. Because what any one person does or does not do, even from a seat of great power, can be changed by a liberation spirit, if we make way for her. Especially considering there are more than 1.4 billion Catholics in the world who want Pope Leo to succeed. And that includes me. Now, Trump's 77 million voters are a fraction of that people power. No wonder Leo makes him and his Silicon Valley guys nervous. He is the inheritor, Pope Leo is the inheritor of a state integrated institution that is 1,646 years old. Meanwhile, Trump is leaning toward the 250th celebration of the signing of the U.S. Declaration of Independence. Rome plays a long game. It always has. Unfortunately, we also need to watch out for the students of Roman Catholicism who have written the U.S. conservatives' playbook of today and are enacting it. So this is where I'm going to turn back to you. I've shared a lot of ideas, a lot of perspectives, but I'd really like to invite you to turn to your neighbor, reflect on what you heard, and then in a few minutes we'll come back so that you can share any of your own thoughts with the wider group. Thank you. Okay, just maybe